Ever get that feeling? Like certain groups in history, they kind of linger in your mind,
Oh, yeah.
feel kind of important, maybe even a little bit, well, a little bit dangerous, right?
Right, yeah, like there's something more to them.
Hinting at secrets we can't quite figure out. I think that's the whole pull of the Knights Templar for me, honestly.
Yeah, I totally get that.
I mean, they vanished, what, centuries ago, and here we are, still talking about them, still so fascinated. It's amazing, this order of warrior monks. I mean, think about it. These were poor knights. That's what they called themselves.
Right.
But they somehow became incredibly powerful. Even kings owed them money. And then, boom, accused of heresy, whispered to be mixed up in all these secret rituals.
Yeah, there's so much intrigue around them. It's really hard to separate fact from fiction sometimes.
Makes you wonder, what's the actual story behind their, well, unbelievable rise and then their super dramatic fall? And why, out of all the religious orders that existed back then, why are the Templar mysteries the ones that just keep captivating us?
That's the real question, isn't it? I think it's that central contradiction that they embodied. On the one hand, they were deeply, deeply religious, like seriously devoted, taking those hardcore monastic vows. But then on the other, they were super worldly. I mean, they had armies, they were bankers, they wielded huge financial and military power. It's that inherent tension, that clash of what seem like total opposites, that I think makes their story so gripping, you know?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Like this push and pull, the sacred and the, I don't know, the more earthly, the practical.
It's like a story with built-in drama, and that keeps us hooked even centuries later.
Okay, so let's try to set the scene a little bit. We're talking Europe, early 12th century. Religion is basically everything.
Yeah.
And there's this huge focus on the Crusades, these holy wars to, recapture Jerusalem. And the whole emergence of the Templars, it's really tied to that, tied to the First Crusade.
Totally.
Yeah, so can you give us a quick recap? What was actually happening in Europe and in the Holy Land that led to this whole thing?
All right, so we're talking the late 11th century. Things were really shifting in the east. You had the Seljuk Turks. They're expanding their territory in Asia Minor, becoming a real threat to the Byzantine Empire, which, by the way, was Christian.
Right.
And this made it way more dangerous for Christian pilgrims trying to get to the Holy Land.
Right, because it's right in that pathway.
Exactly. So in 1095, the Byzantine emperor, he's getting nervous. He actually appeals to the West for help. And Pope Urban II, he seizes this moment. He issues a call for the First Crusade. And here's the key part. He promises forgiveness of sins for anyone who takes part in this mission to liberate the Holy Land.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, imagine that in medieval Europe, that promise was huge. A one-way ticket to heaven, basically.
A huge motivator. It's hard for us to even wrap our heads around that kind of religious fervor these days.
It was a different world, and the initial response to the Pope's call, it wasn't exactly a smooth military operation.
You're talking about the People's Crusade. Wasn't that a bit of a disaster?
It was, kind of. So in 1096, before the official armies, the knights, and all that were ready to go, there's this huge wave of ordinary people, regular folks, fired up by religious zeal.
Right, like a grassroots movement almost.
They set off, led by this charismatic figure, Peter the Hermit.
Yeah.
And, well, they weren't soldiers. They were poorly equipped, barely organized. And Peter himself, he seemed to think, like, God would just take care of everything. But they weren't prepared for the reality on the ground.
Yeah, real-world logistics, those matter.
Huge understatement. They ended up causing problems even as they went through Byzantine territory, Christian territory. They started looting for supplies.
Not exactly the best first impression.
No, not at all. And it only got worse once they actually ran into the Seljuk Turks in Asia Minor.
Right, they actually had to, fight.
And that led to a total catastrophe. The Seljuks, they were experienced warriors. The People's Crusade, they were just overwhelmed. Only a tiny fraction of them made it to Constantinople.
It's a pretty stark reminder of how dangerous those journeys were.
For sure. And it made it clear, like, if they wanted to actually achieve anything in the Holy Land, they needed a much more professional, a much more organized army.
Yeah, a force that could actually take and hold territory. So that brings us to 1097, the First Crusade, the real deal. This was completely different, right?
Night and day. We're talking well-trained armies, seasoned knights, led by, like, the top guys, nobles like Godfrey of Bouillon and Raymond of Toulouse. They had experience. They had a goal in mind. It wasn't just about getting to Jerusalem. It was about staying there.
Establishing a foothold,
Yeah.
a permanent Christian presence, ambitious.
For sure.
Yeah.
But let's not sugarcoat it. Even for them, that journey was brutal.
I bet. What is it like?
Marching through Asia Minor, Scorching heat, disease outbreaks, and then times where they're just flat out starving. Their numbers take a huge hit. It's incredible they even made it, honestly.
That kind of resilience, it makes you think about the Templars later on, right?
Yeah.
Maybe some of that was passed down, that spirit of just pushing through no matter what.
Could be. But, like I said, they had that ultimate goal driving them the Holy Land. And in 1099, after years of this, they finally reached Jerusalem.
And that's when the siege began. It must have been just, I don't know, desperate.
Absolutely. I mean, they've come so far, but they're exhausted, supplies are low, and the city, well, it's heavily fortified. They're camped outside, it's summer in Jerusalem. Imagine the heat, the lack of water.
Grueling. But eventually they broke through.
They did. July 15th, 1099, they breached the walls. But what happened next, it's a dark chapter, to say the least.
The massacre. It's hard to even talk about it.
The accounts are horrific, even those written by the Crusaders themselves. It was of a bloodbath, and it totally changed how the Crusaders were viewed in the East.
Yeah. I mean, they might have seen themselves as liberating Jerusalem, but for those living there.
They became these brutal conquerors.
Which set the stage for so much conflict that followed. So, victory, sure, but a costly one. And then the question becomes, okay, we've taken Jerusalem, now what?
Right, how do you hold on to this territory?
Especially when most of the Crusaders, they'd fulfilled their vows. They just wanted to go home. So who's going to protect the Holy Land, protect those pilgrims who, are now flooding in to visit these holy sites?
It was a real challenge, and it was in that context that the idea for a specialized force, a dedicated order of, warrior monks, began to emerge. And that's where the Templars come in.
Warrior monks, what a fascinating concept. Can you tell us about those first Templars? How did they actually come together, and what were they like?
It's actually pretty remarkable. It's around 1119, just about a decade after the conquest of Jerusalem.
So things are still chaotic.
Oh, yeah. And this small group of knights, led by this guy, Hughes de Payens, they approach King Baldwin II of Jerusalem, and they have this, kind of radical idea. They're like, we're going to dedicate ourselves to protecting these roads, to keeping pilgrims safe.
Sounds pretty straightforward.
Here's the twist. They didn't want to do it as paid soldiers or vassals looking for land or titles. They wanted to do it as monks, bound by sacred oaths to God.
So you've got these battle-hardened knights wanting to become monks. That's a pretty unique combination.
Totally flips the script. Traditionally, monks, they withdraw from the world, renounce violence, and knights, they're warriors. The Templars are something completely new. They're these warrior monks. They're merging their fighting skills with a deep spiritual purpose.
Almost like a contradiction in terms. Where do they even set up?
They're actually given quarters near what used to be the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount, a super significant site. It was believed to be where the Temple of Solomon once stood.
The Temple of Solomon.
That's where they get their name.
Right, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. But everyone just calls them the Templars.
Catchy, right.
And those early Templars, it sounds like they lived a pretty simple life, pretty humble.
For sure. Legend has it that their emblem was two knights riding one horse.
Two knights on one horse. Wow.
It symbolized their poverty, and humility. They wore these plain white mandals, lived on charitable donations, and they followed a strict monastic code. Super disciplined, you have to be to pull that off. But their mission, it wasn't peaceful, was it?
Anything but. Patrolling those roads, protecting those pilgrims. I mean, those routes were dangerous. Bandits, attacks by Muslim forces, they faced it all. They were basically putting their lives on the line, all for the sake of defending Christianity.
Real dedication. It sounds like word of their bravery and their effectiveness spread pretty quickly back to Europe.
It did, and that caught the attention of, some pretty influential people. Which brings us to this crucial moment, the Council of Troyes in 1129. This changed everything for the Templars.
It did. They go from this small band of knights to
a force to be reckoned with. In 1129, at the Council of Troy, the Catholic Church officially recognizes them as a monastic military order. And there's this one guy, Bernard of Clairvaux, a hugely influential theologian.
a big name.
Huge. He champions them. He's like, look, these guys are the ideal Christian knights.
So he's their PR guy, basically. He was a powerful advocate. And this recognition from the church, it wasn't just symbolic, it was a game changer. They answered directly to the Pope.
So no messing around with local kings or bishops.
Exactly. No local interference. They were exempt from taxes. They weren't bound by local laws. They could build their own fortresses. And get this, they were authorized to raise funds all across Europe.
The Pope essentially gave them a blank check. both literally and figuratively.
Pretty much. And after that, well, they just exploded in popularity. You have noble knights, wealthy families, they all want in. Donations pour in, land, money. It's like everyone wanted to be associated with the Templars.
It's like they went viral, but in the medieval sense.
Yeah.
So this incredibly successful order, what was life actually like for a Templar? I mean, day to day, how did they live?
Well, imagine this blend of hardcore discipline, like seriously hardcore, with the intense demands of, military life.
A unique combination.
They had to take 3 vows: chastity, poverty, and obedience. Think about that. Giving up relationships, possessions, any personal ambition.
It's almost like joining, I don't know, a super strict order of monks, but with swords.
When you joined, you basically left your old life behind. Your fellow Templars, they became your family. Your home was the network of fortresses they were building all over Europe and the Holy Land.
An international brotherhood of warriors.
Spot on. And unlike typical feudal armies, which were pretty loosely organized, the Templars, they had a strict hierarchy, clear rules. Everyone knew their place. At the top, you had the Grand Master, elected for life. He was the boss. Under him, you had the Marshal, in charge of all things military.
The brains behind their strategies.
And then there was the Seneschal, who handled all the finances, the administration, the day-to-day running of their massive operation. It was a well-oiled machine, honestly.
Like a medieval multinational corporation, but with a spiritual mission. But the order wasn't all elite knights, was it? There were others involved.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So you had your knight brothers, the top tier, but then you also had sergeant brothers. They were usually from, less noble families.
Rank and file.
They were the backbone, the infantry. They also helped manage the Templars' properties and all that. Then you had the chaplains taking care of spiritual needs, religious services. And then there were these guys called Turcopoles.
Turcopoles.
Local recruits, often Christian, who lived in the Holy Land. They were the light cavalry, scouts, interpreters. They were super valuable for helping the Templars adapt to fighting, in that terrain against Muslim armies.
So a pretty diverse group, all working together.
Yeah.
What would a typical day look like for a Templar? Were they, constantly training, fighting?
Imagine this. Wake up at dawn, prayers, followed by a very simple breakfast. Bread, veggies, maybe some cheese.
Not exactly a lavish feast.
They weren't allowed to eat alone, and meals were silent. Someone would read religious texts while they ate.
Serious dedication.
And after breakfast, it was straight into training. Hours of it every day. Sword fighting, horseback riding, archery, all of it.
They had to be in top shape physically and mentally.
They drilled and drilled, and they focused on fighting as a unit. That was their thing. They moved together, supported each other, reacted to commands instantly, like a well-oiled machine, like you said earlier. But they weren't just muscle. There was an intellectual side, too.
Right. They had to be savvy, manage their affairs, and navigate different cultures.
Lots of them were literate. They managed accounts, wrote letters, studied maps, even read military treatises. Some of them probably spoke multiple languages.
Talk about well-rounded.
They were dealing with people from all over, Byzantines, Arabs, Europeans.
And that vow of obedience, that must have been crucial for their effectiveness.
Absolutely essential. It's what set them apart. Other knights, they might question orders. They might even, abandon a battle if it looked bad. A Templar, their obedience was absolute. Their duty was to fight to the death if their commander ordered it, even if they were totally outnumbered.
That level of discipline, it's almost unimaginable. It makes sense why they were so feared on the battlefield. So let's talk about that iconic look, that symbol we all know, the red cross on the white mantle. What's the story there?
So at first, they just wore plain white, right? It symbolized their, their purity, their monastic vows. But then in 1147, Pope Eugene III, he gives them the right to wear a red cross on their mantles.
Powerful imagery.
Instantly recognizable. It showed they were willing to, shed their blood, to die as martyrs for their faith.
And it becomes one of the most enduring symbols of the Crusades. So we've got these warrior monks, and then they become international bankers. It's quite elite.
Right. It's wild. But they were brilliant. They basically created one of the very first international banking systems.
How did that even work back then?
Imagine a pilgrim heading to Jerusalem from, let's say, Paris.
Oh.
He can deposit his money at a Templar preceptory in Paris, and they give him a letter of credit, a special document. He gets to Jerusalem, goes to another Templar house, shows them the letter, and boom, he can withdraw his money.
It's like an early version of a traveler's check.
Genius, right?
Yeah.
It meant people didn't have to carry bags of gold across dangerous territory.
It's much safer. But they didn't stop there, did they?
Oh no. That network of preceptories, it became like the ultimate safe deposit box. Kings, nobles, even the church, they all stored their valuables with the Templars.
Because their fortresses were so secure.
Impregnable. Plus, they were, considered honest. They also started lending money, financing projects, supporting rulers.
Ironic for an order that took a vow of poverty.
Talk about a contradiction. And all that wealth, it definitely played a role in their eventual downfall.
It made them a target, that's for sure. And then there's the Battle of Hattin in 1187. A massive turning point.
Huge turning point. It really shifts the balance of power in the Crusades. You've got Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt and Syria, a brilliant military strategist, and he manages to trap the entire Crusader army. He lures them into this waterless desert in July. It's scorching hot, the soldiers are exhausted, parched, and then, to make things even worse, Saladin's forces set fire to the dry grass.
So it's smoke, flames, arrows raining down on them.
A nightmare scenario. Most of the Crusader army breaks, they flee, but not the Templars.
Of course not.
They're surrounded, outnumbered, but they fight like Templars. Fiercely. But it's hopeless. The king of Jerusalem is captured, the Templar Grandmaster is killed, almost all of them are wiped out.
A crushing defeat.
It leads to the loss of Jerusalem, and it weakens the Crusader state significantly, a huge blow for the Templars.
So they never really recovered from that.
Not fully. They hung on, they still had power, but that aura of invincibility, it was gone.
And then comes, well, the day that's basically synonymous with bad luck. Friday the 13th. 1307, to be exact. That's when it all goes down for the Templars.
You could say that. Friday, October 13th, 1307, it's early morning. King Philip V of France, he's the one who gives the order.
And Philip, he wasn't exactly a fan of the Templars, was he?
Let's just say he owed them a lot of money. He saw them as a threat, powerful, wealthy, and he took action.
He basically wiped them out in a single day.
It was swift, brutal, simultaneous arrests of Templars all across France.
And that's where the mystery really kicks in, right? Because their treasury, their fleet, it just vanished.
Like a ghost ship. Poof!
Yeah.
Gone. And it's never been found. To this day, no one knows for sure what happened to all that wealth. It just adds to the intrigue,
Definitely fuels the imagination.
Yeah.
And then there's Jacques de Molay, their last Grandmaster. He became a kind of martyr, didn't he?
Definitely a tragic figure. Imprisoned, tortured, put on trial for heresy.
And visually burned at the stake in 1314.
A grim end. But the story goes that as he was burning, he cursed Philip and the Pope. Predicted their deaths within a year.
Which, amazingly, actually happened.
It did. Coincidence.
Yeah.
Curse. No one knows for sure. But it adds to the whole mystique, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Speaking of mystique, let's dive into this whole idea that the Templars had some kind of secret knowledge.
Okay, yeah. So they were in the East for a long time, right? Centuries. They were exposed to all these different cultures, ways of thinking that most Europeans wouldn't have encountered. It's logical they picked up some, shall we say, unique knowledge along the way.
And there are hints of this in some of their writings and artifacts, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people talk about encrypted texts, unusual maps, architectural plans that seem way too advanced for their time.
There are definitely some things that have been found that, well, they raise more questions than answers. Some of their documents use these weird ciphers that people are still trying to crack. There are architectural sketches that seem surprisingly sophisticated for the time. And some maps seem to show regions that, well, Europeans weren't supposed to know about back then. It's all very intriguing.
Like, how did they know about these places? And then there are the Gothic cathedrals. We're still trying to figure out.
The Gothic cathedrals are definitely a source of a lot of speculation. Were the Templars involved in their design and construction? Maybe. It's not out of the realm of possibility. And some of the features, the symbols, the mathematical ratios, they do hint at a deeper understanding of geometry or maybe even some kind of esoteric knowledge that was, kept secret.
And then you have this whole theory of, like, an underground empire.
Yeah.
A network of tunnels, secret passageways connecting all their castles, their preceptories.
Yeah, the idea of this vast underground network is super compelling, right? Secret communication, moving people, maybe even treasure, all hidden from view. It's a cool idea, and there have actually been discoveries of tunnels at some Templar sites. Not enough to say for sure, but, it's tantalizing.
It makes you wonder, where did these tunnels lead? Were they connecting to, like, even older, ancient underground sites?
Who knows? It's fun to speculate. It definitely adds to the mystery.
It's amazing how the Templars, even though they vanished centuries ago, they still have this kind of, well, this impact. Like, we see traces of their influence even today, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And it's not just in the obvious places like, banking, which they basically invented.
Right.
There are those who believe their navigational skills, which, let's face it, they were amazing sailors, might have actually influenced later explorers. And even in military circles, their battle tactics, their focus on discipline and organization, those are still studied.
Makes sense. They were incredibly effective. And then you have the more, I don't know, esoteric connections, their symbols, their rituals. They seem to pop up in later secret societies.
Right, like the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, even the Illuminati, some people say. Is there a direct link, a hidden lineage? Who knows?
Yeah,
But the similarities are striking.
it's all part of their allure, that sense of mystery. And we can't forget about, well, one of the most enduring Templar legends, Friday the 13th.
Ah, yes. The day their world came crashing down. It's definitely ingrained in our collective consciousness as a day for bad luck.
And the fact that we still tell that story, that it's still relevant, it says something.
Definitely.
And then there's the curse of the treasures, right? All that wealth that you supposedly accumulated, it just vanishes. Poof! It's like their fleet. People are still looking for it, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. People are still convinced it's out there somewhere. Buried under Rosslyn Chapel, hidden in the Swiss Alps, maybe even beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It's a treasure hunt that's been going on for centuries. And the fact that it's still unsolved just makes it more enticing.
Makes you wonder, did they plan it that way? Did they hide their wealth so well that it would never be found? Or did someone else get to it first?
Another mystery. And what about the modern Templar organizations? I mean, it's wild to think there are groups out there today who claim to be connected to the original knights.
It's like their legacy is still alive in some form.
It's amazing, really. You've got everything from charitable organizations that focus on Templar history to more, I don't know, mystical groups that claim to have secret knowledge passed down from the original order. It's a whole world unto itself.
It is. Okay, so let's talk about one of the most popular and most enduring Templar legends, their connection to the Holy Grail.
Ah, the Holy Grail. It's a powerful symbol, isn't it? The cup used by Christ at the Last Supper. And many believe that the Templars, during their time in the Holy Land, they discovered it. Not only that, they became its guardians.
And this wasn't just the Grail, right? Weren't they also said to have found other relics?
Oh yeah, big ones. The Spear of Destiny, the spear that pierced Jesus' side on the cross, fragments of the true cross itself. Imagine that.
Imagine holding those relics in your hand, knowing their history. It's, I don't know, almost overwhelming.
It's mind-blowing. And then you've got those accounts from the Inquisition trials, the ones where some Templars hinted at a great secret.
Oh, yeah, those are really intriguing. Like, they knew something that could potentially undermine the entire Christian faith.
It's so suggestive, isn't it? What was this secret? An object, a piece of knowledge. We may never know, but it adds another layer to the whole Templar enigma.
Maybe it was the Grail itself, or
Yeah.
something connected to it.
Could be. And that leads us to this idea of a code in stone, right? The theory that the Templars hid clues, encoded messages in their architecture. And the prime example that everyone points to is Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland.
Rosslyn Chapel. It's
Oh.
beautiful, mysterious. I've always wanted to go.
It's a must-see. And those carvings, they're intricate, unique. People have found what look like musical notes in them, possible astronomical charts, and the whole chapel's proportions, they're based on the golden ratio. It's like a puzzle waiting to be solved.
Like they were deliberately leaving behind a message. And then there's the theory of the underground libraries.
Yeah.
Vast collections of ancient texts hidden away beneath their strongholds.
The lost libraries of the Templars, it's such a romantic image. Imagine finding scrolls from ancient Egypt, from Babylon, containing knowledge that was, considered too dangerous for the world back then.
It's like a plot from an Indiana Jones movie.
It's totally Indiana Jones. No one's found a definitive Templar library yet. But there have been discoveries of underground chambers, and those satellite images, they show some pretty weird stuff beneath certain castles. It keeps the hope alive.
It's exciting to think that those lost libraries might still be out there somewhere, just waiting to be rediscovered.
Right. It's a reminder that history is never really finished. There are always new things to uncover.
Okay, so we've talked about the mysteries, the legends. Let's talk about Jacques de Malay's prophecy. It's a pretty chilling one.
Yeah, the curse of the last Grandmaster. As he was being burned, He basically said that the Templars would be avenged, that they would return.
Some people say it was a curse, others say it was a prophecy. What do you think?
I think it's open to interpretation, but it definitely adds to the whole narrative, doesn't it? This idea that the Templars, even in death, they were not to be trifled with.
And it feeds into all those theories about, their secret influence on events even today.
It's like they're still out there, lurking in the shadows.
Speaking of shadows, there's this so-called archaeological revelation of the 21st century in Israel. What's the story there?
This one's interesting. There have been reports, not fully confirmed, mind you, of some pretty big discoveries near Acre in Israel. Underground tunnels, maybe connected to the Templars, filled with treasure. But it's not just gold and jewels. They supposedly found manuscripts, maps, all sorts of artifacts that could change our understanding of what the Templars were really up to.
Any specifics?
People are talking about maps of unknown lands, treatises on alchemy, astronomy, all sorts of stuff. Some of the writing is in this weird code with symbols no one recognizes. It's all under wraps right now, supposedly being analyzed by experts.
If it's true, it's huge.
It would be a game changer, that's for sure. It could rewrite history.
So from warrior monks to international bankers to maybe secret keepers of ancient knowledge, they were a busy bunch.
They got around.
And that leads us to this idea of them as, like, secret diplomats. These warrior monks, they were also apparently involved in high-level diplomacy, right?
They were definitely more than just fighters. They had this massive network. They were traveling all over, meeting with kings, sultans, all the big players. It's not hard to imagine them gathering intel, maybe even whispering in a few ears, trying to influence events behind the scenes.
They had the money, they had the connections. It makes sense.
Plus, they had this moral authority. They were seen as, above the fray, so people trusted them. And there are some, well, let's call them rumors of Templar artifacts being found in some very unexpected places, like maybe even China?
China. That's a long way from Jerusalem.
It is, but it makes you wonder, how far did their reach actually extend?
Okay, I want to talk about some of these wilder theories, these more speculative ideas about the Templars, because things are about to get, well, pretty interesting.
Buckle up.
First up, the Code of Immortality, supposedly hidden in Chartres Cathedral, specifically in those intricate labyrinths on the floor.
Chartres is a fascinating place, full of symbolism, and that labyrinth, it's been the subject of so much speculation. Some people think it's just a walking meditation path, others say it's a map of the cosmos.
And some say it contains the secret to immortality.
Some do. There are those who believe that its design is based on, ancient knowledge about the human life cycle, about energy flow, maybe even about the structure of DNA.
DNA, like the building blocks of life.
Yeah. But how would the Templars have known about DNA? It's a modern discovery.
That's the question, isn't it? Maybe they learned it from, I don't know, some lost civilization, some secret tradition passed down through the ages.
Maybe. It's definitely a stretch, but hey, it's
Yeah.
fun to consider.
And Chartres isn't the only place where these kinds of theories pop up, right? There are others that are even more out there.
Oh yeah, we're just getting started.
Like this one, the quantum enigma of the Templars. That's a pretty dramatic name.
It is. This one centers around the supposed discovery of a metal plate found in a Templar, well, I don't know if I should say hideout, but on this plate, there are these diagrams that look like, well, modern-day diagrams of quantum entanglement, of how to build qubits for quantum computers.
So the Templars were quantum physicists.